Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the 611th regular meeting of the City of Laurel Planning Commission. This meeting is being conducted in person at the Municipal Center. If you wish to speak, we have people that have signed up in advance. Those that signed up this evening, if you have not signed up and would like to speak, there is a sign-up sheet by the door over to my right. There will be a two-minute limit for each speaker. If you cannot attend, if you're watching online, we did have some written comments submitted. We'll talk about those later. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Council President Cole.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Kish.
Here.
Mr. Welford.
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Spalding.
Here.
Chairwoman Bettman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before moving on to agenda item 2, I'd like to note that last night at the Mayor and City Council meeting, Monte Burrow, who was our acting director, was confirmed and appointed as the Director of Economic and Community Development. Congratulations and best wishes going forward. Moving on to agenda item 2, approval of the minutes from the July 16, 2024 meeting. Those minutes were sent to us electronically. Are there any questions for staff? If no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from July 16th, 2024 meeting as written and received from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Welford. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Welford.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Kish.
Abstain, I wasn't at.
Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, preliminary subdivision plan application number 960, 14251 and 14275 Park Center Drive, filed by Stanley Martin Homes. Included in this agenda item is a public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission. Mr. Burrow?
Good evening, Madam Chair, fellow commission members. This is Monte Burrow, Director with ECD. Subdivision plan application number 960 was filed on July 3rd, 2024 with Greater Laurel Professional Park, LLLP, seeking approval to construct 82 townhomes on 2 lots located 14251, and 14275 Park Center Drive, Laurel, Maryland 20707. In addition, the applicant proposes to have up to 6 dwellings dedicated for workforce housing, moderate income housing, and/or age-restricted housing. This will be approximately 7% of the total proposed use. This was approved before we changed to 8%. Parking, the applicant proposed having at least 3 parking spaces per town unit for a total of 246 spaces, which complies with the scheduled parking requirements found in section 20:16.5. Townhome units with a single-car garage will have 2 on-site parking spaces. A townhouse unit with double-car garage will have at least 3 on-site spaces. For the remaining 62 required parking spaces, the applicant proposes providing all-street parking lots throughout the development. In addition, section 20:16.5 adopted into the Unified Land Development Code, September 2023, by the ordinance number 2016 and text amendment number 2064 states that the new residential townhouse dwellings with a separate garage, carport, or driveway shall be equipped with 1 level 2 EV charging outlets per dwelling unit. This does not affect the total number of parking spaces required. In the green space, the applicant proposed having approximately 23,800 square feet of dedicated open space located in 2 areas of the property. Under date of July 16, 2024, a site plan justification statement, a cover letter asking for comments were sent to state and local agents. Comments were received under date of July 16, 2024. A memorandum asking for comments was sent to the City of Laurel, Department of Public Works, Police Department, Department of Fire Marshal, Permit Service, and Department of Parks and Recreation. The City of Laurel, Department of Parks and Recs, and Laurel Police Department had no issue with the proposal. Comments from the Department of Public Works can be found in the staff report. Under the date August 26, 2024, a letter explaining the nature of the application and advising of scheduled hearing before the City of Laurel Planning Committee was sent by mail and affidavit to confirm to all contingency property owners. Staff recommends that the City of Laurel Planning Commission approves of subdivision plan application 960 with the following condition for the location 14251 and 14275 Park Center Drive, Laurel, Maryland. The first condition, the applicant shall obtain final site and landscape approval from the Planning Commission. The applicant shall obtain final record plat from the Planning Commission, and the applicant shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations for protection of the use of the property. The file contains an affidavit signed with the applicant attesting that a zoning sign has been placed on the subject property, has remained and shall remain until the decision is reached by the City of Laurel Planning Commission. That concludes the reading of the file. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Burrow? Not, we'll move to the applicant. Did the applicant wish to speak? Welcome. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. For the record, Arthur Horn with the Law Office of Shipley and Horn, 1101 Mercantile Lane, Largo, Maryland. Here on behalf of the applicant, Stanley Martin Holmes, represented by Mr. Dan Jackson, who is here. We have with us the civil engineer, Ms. Amy Summer from CPJ, and Lanhart Traffic Consultant Director is here, Mr. Mike Lenhart. Madam Chair, I'll be very brief. We support the staff report. We thank Mr. Burrow for his thorough presentation. I appeared before this commission virtually for the special exception. So it's good to be here in person. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. This is going to be a beautiful development in the community and add some homes as well as affordable homes to the City of Laurel. We thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, are there any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
At 6:07 PM, I will open the public hearing on this application. I do have some people pre-signed up. If you could let me know if maybe that they are the applicants. Gifton James, if you would like to speak, welcome. If you would please come up and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Gibson James. My address is 14106 Mint Law Landing, Laurel, Maryland. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to voice my strong opposition to the building of the 82 townhomes at the Oaks at Laurel. I'm the owner of Lot 26. For the last 15 years, my family has only known Lot 26 as our home. Our home is only 37.8 feet from Unit 10 and the row of townhomes attached to it in the current plan. This is too close to have so many townhomes, not to mention the roads leading to those townhomes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the traffic impact analysis. So Exhibit 6 of the traffic impact analysis states they're only expecting 27 cars to leave the 82 townhouses in the morning. With 200 and some parking spaces, to expect only 27 to leave in the morning, that seems a little unbelievable. And especially in this commuter area. I don't know where they got their data, and I don't know if it's national but you have to look at local information for this type of stuff. Even the ITE manual that they use suggests that they should be using local data. Is that 27 based on data from this area? I don't know, but I look at my cul-de-sac, maybe the 6 houses that are in my cul-de-sac, you have 10 people driving out of there every morning. And that's even when my daughter's not home from college, right? We have a high commute area. Everybody is leaving in the morning, if not 2 people leaving in the morning, if not 3. The report says that they are under the critical lane volume required values. However, it isn't good enough to just say they remain under a value. Tell us what the current value is. Tell us what you think it's going to be. Also tell us if that value makes sense, because you should tell us what the maximum townhome capacity is to reach this threshold. Because if you tell me 2,000 townhouses are there, that just doesn't meet reasonableness.
Excuse me, Madam Chairwoman. Seems we've lost connection with the clock and the countdown hasn't been working, but the 2 minutes was reached.
Thank you. 1 more minute, sir.
Okay.
If you could.
I also want to talk, this is my backyard. I definitely have a personal stake here. When I look in my backyard right now, I see good green space. I have a fence. They put up the fence. They're letting it go into disrepair. It's now falling down. Once it falls down, you can clearly see the buildings that are beyond the townhome, what are going to be the townhouses. So the townhouses are even going to be closer than that. It's very disrupting to be able to see that stuff from your bedroom, from your backyard. These things are going to be very high up. We're going to see them. I hope you, in summary, I hope you make sure to oppose this building. Please take a look at the traffic analysis again. Get them to show where this data is coming from. It really is very confusing. And they also missed a stop sign in our road when they did their traffic analysis. There's a stop sign on Downdale that there's not even covered.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you.
Raju Shah. From Cypress Street. Not here. Amy Summer, I believe, is with the applicant. Thank you. Mr. Lenhart will hold. That's Daniel Jackson, also with the applicant. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Okay, we'll start in the back of the room. If you would please come up and state your name and address for the record, and we'll set the timer at 2 minutes when you begin, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Harshad Patel, and I live at 14300 Wicklow Lane. Yeah, and I have same question about the traffic study. I look at the traffic data and doesn't make sense, like how they count the number of the car, it's so low. And also, you have seen, right, currently is the, we have tally work people. So I don't know, is there a contingency going to be added on the tally working people? Down the road,
I'm sorry, can you restate the last part? Is there going to be contingent on what?
tally work people. Currently,
Oh,
the people,
telework
yeah,
people. I
telework, yeah.
apologize.
So
Okay.
down the road, everybody's gonna go in the office. So make sure they should consider to add some telework people that not count on a traffic study. And another one is the parking. I count the parking. Total 82 townhouse has only 62 parking space. I don't know where they're going to park other cars. I'm proposing there is a no parking for commercial vehicle sign on Park Center Drive that should be removed and replaced with no parking any vehicle. And about the traffic, I don't know what is the guarantee that is not going to increase the traffic on next door community. I like to propose to update the intersection layout. So only vehicle make turn in and out from the Van Dusen Road to this community. So no vehicle go in the next door community.
The intersection at,
It doesn't.
The intersection of the Park Place,
and Van Dusen?
Park Center Drive. So change the layout so the all vehicle make a right turn from the Park Place Drive, Park Center Drive, and also goes in on a Park Center Drive.
Park Center Drive does not intersect Van Dusen.
No, it's intersection with the park, Laurel Park Drive.
Oh, this.
That's, okay, thank you.
And I hope this construction, like this project, not move forward. But even though if it's move forward, I like to consider about the construction. I wanted to make sure that no construction vehicle get in and out from this community, because currently even big truck can make it shortcut from Route 1 through the Van Dusen Road.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next person to speak, please. Welcome. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Good day. My name is Myron Clark. I live on 14109 Chivas Circle, which is adjacent to the Minton Law Court that is backing up against this property. Just off the
Wait,
top.
excuse me, what is your ingress and egress to your neighborhood? Are you Wellington?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I was just.
I am directly across from the Minton
Okay,
Law.
so you don't use Park Center Drive?
I do
is-
not.
Okay, I just want to, I also live in Wellington, so I was just trying to make sure I had my bearings. Thank you, and that doesn't count against your time,
Just off
sorry.
the top of the conversation, I'm against this. Primarily for the real reason is that the community as it stands, with Wellington being built when it was built, all the roads leading in and leading out from this part of the Wellington development are snow emergency route, which means because there was no planning to draw a straight street from Route 1 directly to Van Dusen to get to the hospital, everything that comes through our community is rolling through Cypress onto West Meath, which means it is a natural cut through for anyone trying to get from Route 1 to Van Dusen. This creates a problem because there's tons of people that are walking along the streets or the sidewalks there. And because it's a through fare, cars are always racing through. There is no bumps on the road or anything, or circles on the road to prevent that speeding because it is a snow emergency route. But the issue that is a little jarring is the fact that you have all of these homes being built in a one-way in, one-way out, which basically means that all 82 of those homes will be utilizing our community as a cut through to get the Route 1, which already is jam-packed with vehicles that are using the community as a cut-through as it begins now. That issue has not ceased in the 16, 17 years that we've lived in the community. It's only gotten worse over the years as we have gotten more and more people that have moved into Laurel. But the problems that I'm seeing with this whole idea is that none of those things are being taken into consideration just based off of some of the testimony that's been given thus far. And so, again, I would strongly disagree with this plan development. I think I have a couple more minutes or seconds as a result of your question earlier,
Sure.
15.
Yes.
So as it all stands right now, this current plan has no entryway or exit way from Van Dusen. So I'm just curious to know what's going to happen when an emergency actually takes place and you need to have emergency vehicles going in and out of this community if there's one way in and one way out. And the last thing I will say is that, we get the treat of every year of having the fire department come through during Christmas time with Santa Claus. How are they going to get through those streets over there if there's one way in and one way out? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's someone else wishing to speak? Welcome. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Deepa James. I live at 14106 Mintlaw Landing. My house backs this lot here, 14275. So we are directly affected by this building and the townhomes that will be built here. We only received notice about this on the 26th, as was mentioned by the gentleman over there. So we really didn't have a lot of time to get up a good standing of people here to address our concerns. But many of our neighbors have addressed this and that they're very concerned about the traffic, as was previously mentioned. Also, the number of people, just the population growth is significant for this area, and we already have townhomes that are already townhomes and single-family homes that are already being built across the way. What is the necessity of adding another townhome community here when already this area, when I moved here, it was all woods, and now it is completely built up. And that's not to say it's a negative thing, but definitely the population density is much more than can be handled by the area as obviously listed here. I mean, I can't imagine 80 townhomes just sitting right behind me. And also, I'm concerned about the runoff from this building. Our home is it has a downslope, and I can't imagine that all this excavation and everything, what is going to happen with all this? Is it going to run off into my land? I'd like to know how this is all going to be planned out. The other concern is if this does continue to move forward, even though we've all expressed our opposition, this fence is a critical factor for us in terms of keeping the community that we have segregated from the townhomes. So I'd like that to be addressed as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda item? Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing at 6:21. I would like to invite the applicant or whoever you would like to address. If you could please address the fence issue. Is that something that you plan to redo? And also, I don't know if there are any specific, we did get the traffic study. They are complicated to understand. We've been dealing with those for many, many years. I don't know if, I didn't know if anybody up here had questions with the traffic study. But like I say, if the applicant could come up and if there are any final comments for the applicant.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I wanted to say that with reference to the transportation, that this has been studied and it's been looked at not only professionally by our applicant, but also by your staff, and that it's found that all the sections do not fail, and that these townhomes will not exacerbate the issue, and that if there are some conditions that are proposed that the applicant will abide by with reference to addressing that issue. With reference to the fence, it's my understanding that there is going to be a fence around the property. I just want to confirm. Okay. Fence.
That's falling apart.
Is it? Well, they're the contract purchaser, and we'll speak with the property owner about the existing fence that's there, and let them know the concerns that are being addressed here today. I do want to say that, again, the Laurel City Council created a situation where this development can occur in this particular zone. It has gone through a special exception where we had to meet the criteria to indicate that these number of units at this site meets the criteria for under the Laurel City Code. And here at the preliminary plan, we meet all the criteria for making sure that their health, safety, and welfare will be addressed. Issues like stormwater, all that's taken care of. That's addressed as well. So I understand their concern, but it will be
I
addressed.
just want to clarify that that'll be addressed in the next phase.
Well,
when
no,
we get
it-
to-
well-
stormwater management and all that'll be addressed in the site plan. This is the subdivision.
It's the subdivision, but the location of the stormwater ponds are already in existence and all. And you'll see it on the site plan as well.
What I'm saying, we're not at the
Yes.
site plan yet.
Yes,
to
yes, sir.
approve
You're
the
not
site.
at the site plan yet. That's
That's all I was
correct.
trying to say.
Yes, sir.
But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just in terms of, thank you, sir. That was the other thing that I had written down here, that your concerns about stormwater management, the city and planners take that very, very seriously about runoff and things like that. And where that occurs is if this agenda item goes forward, that will be addressed in the next phase of this. So we are not there. And at that point, but I can assure you that that is something that the city planners take very seriously about runoff and things like that. Are there any questions for either the applicant or staff?
If we could.
Mr.
Is
Wilson?
there somebody here to address traffic plan? Sorry. You were relaxed there.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure, because we've wrestled with traffic plans for quite some time. So when the model gets done, who provides the input to the model?
We have a traffic engineer that we can refer this to look at.
But you've already approved it.
Yes, and we had a staff. I had 2 traffic engineers on my staff that have reviewed it.
So the model with the trip originations came from the applicant or came from the city?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So the model, the
modeling-
controversy is the number of trips generated
That would have come from the developer.
from the developer.
Yes.
From their traffic engineer.
Yes.
Who has a model that accounts for existing development and existing trips.
Right, usually the ITE and, will identify those, and then based on counts of actual traffic with other intersections, that's all combined.
Now, I know
Formulate the report.
we have a long-term plan in the city to address Van Duzen Road.
Yes,
Was that taken into account for this traffic plan?
that traffic report was given to our engineer that is working on Van Duzen Road, and he has taken that into account at that
Yeah,
intersection.
I'm flipping it
Yeah,
on you.
yeah.
So I want to know if the applicant took into account Van Duzen improvements
I believe
in their traffic study.
they have not seen the improvements
Okay.
yet. Those were only presented to council a week ago,
Okay.
yes.
So
just
for
that-
the community, there is how many $1 million, Mr. President?
So the council just received the report from Department of Public Works last week to address the entire length of Van Dusen Road from Old Sandy Spring Road down to Contee. It studied every intersection and gave concept plans of what should be done there to help improve traffic flow. The next step will be for the council to approve RFPs for design and engineering of the different intersections. It'll be 3 phases over the next 3 to 5 years.
Let me back you up before the RFPs go out. We have to get the money.
Correct.
Where are you going to get the money from?
So the council did approve this past spring. We did a bond bid so that we were able to obtain the bonds needed to fund this project. It's roughly estimated at about $4.5 million to create the improvements to Van Dusen Road.
So that hasn't been taken into account in this plan or in the next case in front of us. It's coming down the pike. It's not funded yet,
Correct.
right? It's going to go into the capital improvement job jar, and it'll be funded over time. So I just want everybody to understand that. But that doesn't change anything in their traffic study. And what's the worst intersection in their traffic study that this adds?
Well, I can't say specifically regarding their traffic study because I haven't reviewed it. I had other staff in my office.
I'm asking for the city's
Yeah,
vision.
from the city's point of view and based on our study that was done for Van Dusen Road, it would be Cherry Lane and Van Dusen.
And did they pass
They passed at a C level.
at a C?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we have a study that says at worst a D, which is still passing under
Yes, sir.
the arcane roles of traffic engineering. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much, sir. I'm
You're
sorry
welcome.
to put you on
And
the
I'm-
spot.
Just for the record, I'm Tim Miller, Director of Public Works.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam.
Mr. James, how long have you lived in Laurel?
15 years.
15. And Mr. Patel? And Mr. Clark?
17.
Good. And you've seen the growth, right? Now, there'll never be a perfect traffic situation. Traffic, I'd like you to take another look at what traffic is. Traffic is people in motion. People in motion is money in circulation. Money is City Hall's best friend. For this city to continue to grow, City Hall must have a revenue to address some of the problems that you may encounter with traffic, sanitation, public works, keeping the roads running on down the line. So, you know, that's one reality of it. The more people, the more cars, and City Hall now has to ramp up their budgets to keep the roads in good shape, keep the traffic lights going. At some point down the road, I think the city will have to use more technology to control the traffic flow. I don't know at what point. I don't know what kind of technology they'll use, whether it's the drone system or some other system, but the current traffic light system that we have in Laurel will have to be ramped up. More technology has to be brought to the table to have the traffic flow at a much better rate. So that's my reality of it. Thanks.
Any other commissioners? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, I would move to approve the preliminary subdivision plan application number 960 at 14251 and 14275 Park Center Drive as filed by the applicant, and include in that the staff report.
Thank you. Excuse me, do I have a second? Do I have a second for this motion?
I second the motion, Madam Chair.
Mr. Grant, thank you. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Welford,
Yes.
Mr. Kish,
At this time, no.
Chairwoman Bettman,
Yes.
motion carries.
I would like to thank all of you that came out to speak. This is not the end of this development. There is still opportunities in terms of the things that you have raised when we come to the next phase of this, and I encourage you to please stay involved and let your positions be known. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4, Forest Conservation Application and Resolution number 24-04-PC, 6902 Contee Road, filed by Pulte Home Company LLC. Included in this agenda item is a public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission. There is a second agenda item associated with this property. However, due to the separate nature of these, we will take them separately. And when we get to the public hearing, we will go through that. So this is specifically on the forest conservation application and resolution. Mr. Burrow.
Good evening again, Madam Chair and fellow commission members. Before I start, Mr. Ed Gibbs would like to say something before I begin my conservation plan. Yes.
Mr. Gibbs is representing the applicant. Mr. Gibbs.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, Chair Bettman, members of the Planning Commission, and Councilmember Cole, President of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I didn't know that I was going to be called up early, but I'm more than happy because my only point was this. I realized that there are two separate applications that the Planning Commission has to deal with. And I realized that the Forest Conservation Plan is sort of a condition precedent, and that is going to be the first action that the Planning Commission takes. Hopefully not the last, but certainly the first. My concern was simply that I don't want to present the preliminary plan application first, but I do think there are some facts that the commission needs to have before them, facts that are in the record, but still setting sort of the background for why the Forest Conservation Plan looks the way it does. And so I was going to give some background into the project to show why the Forest Conservation Plan is configured the way it is and why there's a need for off-site conservation. And I wasn't going to go into the criteria for approval of preliminary plan or anything like that, but to give you the factual background that brought us to where we were and why the tree conservation plan was prepared in the manner it was. So if I could do that, that would be very helpful.
I still want to handle them separately. I understand so we don't need to see what the townhomes look like. We don't need to see
Nothing.
all of that.
No.
That's in the preliminary site plan.
No.
But after the staff report on forest conservation, you're welcome to give the background that you're not on the clock. The applicant is not on the
Okay, so I'll
clock.
sit down until Mr. Burrow gives the staff
Right.
report on the Forest Conservation
Yeah.
Plan. I'll come up on the Forest Conservation Plan, but giving you some
But giving
facts
some background.
about the property.
And let me just
Yes.
state, for those of you in attendance, and I spoke to staff, I spoke to the attorneys. The reason that we're separating, and I understand your point of presenting, is that there are people here that are specifically want to talk about the forest conservation, how it came about, and things like that. There are also some very specific rules and regulations about forest conservation and what the city has determined, both in its comprehensive plan, things that have been approved in the concept plan. And what I didn't want to do is, this is a very, very large project for the city, and I don't want to just shove it all together and have it get muddled and have people walking out of here and thinking, well, wait a minute, if we'd have taken our time and done it separately. So it may take us a little longer, but I think that we're all better served in having the information into the record. So that is the purpose.
That's fine. I'll sit down and wait my
Thank
turn.
you very, very
Thank you.
much. And Mr. Burrow?
Good evening.
We do, excuse me, procedurally, and I apologize for this, procedurally. In May, this agenda item was tabled. In June, it was tabled again. In July, it was not taken off the table. So before we get started and have even a staff report on this agenda item, I do need a motion and a second and a vote to take this agenda item off the table to be discussed. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, I move to raise from the table, I don't know, Larry, what the right, take from the table, the agenda item number 3, number 4, which is the forest conservation application and resolution that was tabled previously.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Welford. If you would please call the roll, Ms. Gwilyn.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Director Burrow.
Good evening again, Madam Chair and fellow commission members. This is Monte Borough Director, ECD, presenting the staff report. The applicant, Pulte Home Company, LLC, is requesting approval of a forest conservation plan associated with the proposed development of 6902 Contee Road in Corridor Center. The applicant is asked for approval to subdivide 28.24 acres of land to construct 293 residential units. The applicant will be building on parcels identified at tax ID number 10-0993-337, 10-0993-329, 10-993345, and 10-993303. The forest conservation, the property is subject to the provision of Forest Conservation Section 2041.3 of the City Code because the proposed development is greater than 40,000 square feet. A forest delineation and a forest conservation plan are required. The site consists of 28.24 acres and 26.65 acres of the site is wooded. The development proposes to clear 23.95 acres of the existing forest. The applicant is proposing to retain 2.70 acres on the existing forest on site, which will result in a total reforestation requirement of 8.68 acres. The applicant is proposing to provide 2.21 acres on-site reforestation through a combination of 2.02 acres of reforestation and 0.19 acres of qualified landscape areas, leaving 6.47 acres of off-site or other planning requirements. There are sensitive areas on the site, including non-tidal wetlands, non-tidal wetland buffers, streams, and specimen trees. The applicant is proposing to meet the 8.68 acre reforestation requirement by a combination of 2.02 acres on-site reforestation, 1.00 acres of street tree planting per section 2041.9 of the Laurel Unified Development Code, acquisition of an off-site protection easement on the existing forest area with the credit given of a rate of 50% of the area protected per section 2041.9. 0.19 acres of landscape areas per section 2041.9 of the city of Laurel Land Development Code, and credits obtained from a forest mitigation bank, which has been designated by the city per section 2041.9 A5. The applicant has proposed a site for off-site protection of easing on the property of the First Baptist Church of Laurel abutting the subject property. At this time, the church has not yet approved the easement. If the easement is not approved, the total requirements have to be met by a combination of other methods itemized above. It is a recommendation that the Planning Commission approve the Forest Conservation Plan with the following conditions. 1, at the time of the site and landscape plan, the applicant shall submit a final forest conservation plan, which shall demonstrate as a part of the reforestation plan specified methods proposed under section 2041.9 of the City of Laurel Land Development Code. And if those are not sufficient to meet the forestation requirements, the final area for the off-site protective easement and or a mitigation bank per section 2041.9A1 of the Unified Land Development Code from the Planning Commission approval. 2, if credits from the Forest Mitigation Bank are part of the final Forest Conservation Plan, the applicant shall comply with the requirements of section 2041.10, of the United Land Development Code if necessary. The provisions for establishing a forest mitigation bank in section 2041.11 of the Unified Land Development Code or the provision of section 2041.12 of the Unified Land Development Company. That concludes the reading, Madam Chair. I thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Withhold until we hear from the.
Okay, we can revisit that. I would like to invite the applicant up.
Thank you very much. Once again, for the record, since we've now called this case Edward Gibbs, an attorney with offices in Largo, and I'm most pleased to be here this evening representing Pulte Home Company. We have a number of people with us this evening because we wanted to be sure that we had sufficient representatives within their fields of expertise to hopefully respond to any question that any member of the Planning Commission might have. I would like to recognize David DeMarco, who really I've known for, gosh, it must be 30 years and worked with him for 30 years. And he is really responsible for basically Pulte home operations on the East Coast. So his company is the contract purchaser of the property that is before you this evening. I have my associate Haley Thurston, who is with me, sitting directly to Mr. DeMarco's right as you look at him. And then, of course, I do want to tell you who we have from our team who is here. So we have Mr. Ken Dunn from Soltes, the civil engineering firm. They prepared and created all the plans that you have before you. And he's here this evening and certainly can answer any questions that you might have. In addition, we have Mr. Mark Ferguson. Mr. Dunn is right there. Mr. Mark Ferguson is directly behind him. Mr. Ferguson is a planner and an expert in forestry matters, and he and Mr. Dunn worked cooperatively to prepare the Forest Conservation Plan. And Mr. Ferguson is going to come up behind me to go over the Forest Conservation Plan with you because he possesses technical expertise that I don't possess. We also have Mr. Wes Guckert, our transportation engineer. He prepared the transportation impact study for both the conceptual site plan and for the preliminary plan. Both of those studies were scoped by your Department of Public Works and Transportation, and the studies were prepared in strict conformance with the scoping agreements. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to go into those. We have Mr. Tom Cole, our housing policy consultant, who has provided advice throughout to Pulte, and Mr. Zach Fritz, who prepared the fiscal impact analysis for the project. All of those people had a role in putting this application together and getting it before you this evening. As you know, the property in question consists of 5 individual parcels. And we have 2 of the ownership representatives of those 5 parcels with us tonight, Mr. Caleb Gould and Mr. Franz von Wagenberg. They're here this evening. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to sort of frame the issue because when staff looked at the forest conservation plan, and there were a lot of questions coming back because you have a 28-acre piece of property, 26 acres is forested. And to develop it, you're going to have to take trees down. And so the question was, well, why are you going off-site for what you are going off-site for? And so that's why I think understanding the background of how we got to where we are is so important to coming to a resolution on your action on the forest conservation plan. Pulte is really just a master in residential home development and in live-work units within residential communities. And this one is just no different than anything that they've done anywhere else. So they specialize in various types of housing components. They provide move-up opportunities for people who want more square footage. They provide move-down opportunities for people who want to downsize. This project is proposing for the first time in the history of the city of Laurel, workforce and affordable housing for sale. It's never been done as a for sale offering, at least to my knowledge. And so we're happy to be breaking ground in that respect. When I look at this property and the impacts, to to me, you have to look at 95 on the west, 198, the off-ramp coming off to the west and then coming to the north and the northeast. And then, coming down from the south, Cherry Lane, where it comes over and hits Contee, which comes along the lower portion of the property, and Van Dusen Road on the east. And I think it's going to be important as we progress here to see how that land has all developed over the course of the years. What I think it's important for your frame of reference to know and to keep in mind is that, we didn't ask for this property to be zoned MXT. MXT, mixed use transportation oriented, probably the most intense zoning classification that you have in the city. It authorizes, as a matter of, if you provide public benefit, as a matter of right, you could get, they don't even test density by units per acre. It's floor area ratio. And you can go up to a maximum of 8.0 floor area ratio. So in other words, you could build a 10 or a 15-story apartment building on this property with structured parking, and it would be permitted as a matter of right if you gave the public benefit features. By contrast, our development plan has a floor area ratio of 0.6. We're not even at 1. We're not even at 1. We're below the threshold. So what we're bringing may seem dense to some people, but it's not for the zoning classification that the city has put this property in. The city assigned the MXT zoning classification to this property in 2009. They, by doing that, designated this property as a growth area for the city of Laurel. And when the city's master plan in 2016 was up, the prior master plan designated this property for planned development. When the 2016 comprehensive plan was adopted, they changed that and they said mixed use in accordance with the MXT zone. And that's a map that's on page 73 of the comprehensive plan. So if you go look at it, you will see it. It's hatched MXT, and the language recommendation is develop in accordance with the MXT zone classification. So when we filed our conceptual site plan, we were extremely detailed, extremely. We didn't just file a bubble diagram as we could have. We filed our sketch plan drawing with it. And within that sketch plan drawing, we said we're proposing to do 302 units. We said we would have 144 stacked townhomes. We would have 13 senior villas, and we would have, I think, 148 regular townhomes. And we specified in the plan and on the drawing that we provided that they would be 16 feet wide units, 22 foot wide units, and 24 foot wide townhouse units. We had a slide deck that's been updated for tonight, but it showed all the architecture. I mean, we went above and beyond to be extremely detailed. Your technical staff report that was issued analyzed all of that and included all of the information I've just related to you and recommended approval of 302 units and for the ratio and types of residential units, which, by the way, the regular townhomes were to include 12 live-work units. All that was in there. They recommended approval. You recommended approval of the conceptual site plan as well. And then it's important to note that when the mayor and council approved the conceptual site plan for this project, in their heading, they expressly said, we approve the conceptual site plan for the development of 302 units on the Corridor Center project. Not up to 302, 302. Not what the applicants can show on their preliminary plan, but 302 units. And it further said, we expressly adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in the technical staff report, all that detail. So when we went through and got an approved conceptual site plan, that's what we had. We had 302 units. We had the breakdowns on the townhomes. And I'd like to, we have a side-by-side exhibit. Could you bring that up, Ms. Quillen? There you go. It's a little bit difficult to see. conceptual site plan is on the left. The preliminary subdivision plan is on the right. They are identical. The drawing on the left, you had before you. You approved this drawing when you approved the conceptual site plan. That's part of what was approved. That's part of what the staff report approved, and that is what the city council and mayor. And you look at those two, we're doing nothing different. The only thing we have done is reduce from 302 units to 293 units so that we could provide a little bit more on-site forest preservation for our forest conservation plan. So, you know, with the utmost of respect, I say this. We're not doing anything other than what the city has already approved for this property. And the difficult situation that you find yourself in is that you can't do this and save all of the trees on the site. And that's the very purpose of a forest conservation plan. And that's why your code authorizes developers to go off-site to provide forest conservation that they can't provide on-site to realize development that is permitted in their zoning classification. And that's why we're here this evening with the forest conservation plan in mind. We are working with the First Baptist Church of Laurel. We've had several meetings with them. We're not concluded, but we are hopeful that a substantial amount of the off-site forest conservation can be achieved in an easement with the city, which is immediately abuts our property on the east side. So with that sort of background in mind and sort of explaining why it is that we're taking trees down, I'd like to ask Mr. Ferguson to come up and actually go through the forest conservation plan for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission and the City Council. Mark Ferguson. Mr. Gibbs did a wonderful job of giving you some background context. I think I would only amplify his comments on your city's master plan. You have in your plan clearly directed we want growth and we want it to occur in designated areas. And you identify two general designated areas, your revitalization district along US 1 and the MXT areas on the western edge of the city. And this is one of those MXT areas where you say where you have growth, put it in these places. The master plan specifically says there isn't much land left. And so here we are. So what you are ending up with is a sort of natural conflict between the goals to bring in growth, the way that you've planned, the way that you've zoned, and at the same time protect areas that are important to the city. And the plan goes through those very specifically. Your plan talks about preservation of sensitive areas, and sensitive areas you define, streams, associated wetlands, floodplain, right? The buffers around them. And this plan does that. There are sensitive areas on the property. There is an area of wetlands and an emergent stream in the northeast corner. I will be a little nervy and correct one point that Mr. Gibbs said about the difference between the conceptual site plan and the preliminary plan. There was one change. In the conceptual site plan, there's a road. You can't really see it because it's in the white corner of it that did cross an area of sensitive features in the conceptual site plan. We revised the preliminary plan to remove that impact, to preserve those areas, and to preserve the woodlands in those areas. So and I've written a 7-page report that I'm sure put many of you to sleep last night. It is in the record, and what I'd just like to do is go through it very briefly to explain how you get to where we are. So the first thing your ordinance does is say, if you can, don't take down any trees. Okay, we just can't. If you have to take down trees, do the best you can to save what you can. So here is where that inherent conflict in between planning for growth and planning for preservation happens. And what you find jurisdictions do is you prioritize development in certain areas, and you prioritize conservation in others. And what your plan's done is say, here, prioritize growth. So then we're charged with going through priority areas. Number one, your sensitive areas. We've left those entirely alone. I'm going to go a little bit out of order. To number two, prioritize trees that are associated with historic site or structure, or that are any state champions or county champions. And we don't have any champion trees, and we don't have any historic structures. Preserve, and this is another sensitive area, preserve the habitats of any rare, threatened, or endangered species. We don't have anything like that. These are, and I'm sure I'll make people angry by saying this, just trees. So then there's two charges left. Do what you can to preserve areas of contiguous forest, and do what you can to preserve the large diameter, what other jurisdictions call specimen trees, trees that are bigger than 30 inches around at the trunk, or, if like a persimmon, the biggest persimmon in the state is smaller, so 75% of the biggest persimmon. And there are a number of specimen trees scattered through the site. So what we've done is we have preserved, I apologize, contiguous areas on the western part of the site, up against the I-95 ramp. You can see that large area of green on the west end of the site. There are a large number, approximately a third to 40% of the specimen trees on the site that are in that area to the west that are being preserved. The other area is, of course, around the sensitive areas to the east. And then I think, as Mr. Gibbs said, we're hopeful that we reach a final agreement with the church. But the area that we propose to acquire to satisfy part of our reforestation requirement abuts the site exactly to the east. And so we will be preserving, if not on our site, a substantive area of contiguous forest to meet that requirement. Mr. Burrows, sorry, there's only one of you, Mr. Burrow, went through the calculations to get to the 8.68 acres of planting, and he had that correct to the 100th of the acre. What the Forest Conservation Ordinance does is it says you have to put back trees for every tree or area of treed area that you take down. And if you get to a certain point, you got to put back extra. We've crossed over into that area where we're putting back extra. So it's not just the base requirement, it's an enhanced requirement. Segueing into a final point I'd like to make, the state legislature this year passed some legislation to amend the state's forest conservation law. Now, part of what they did was kick some changes that they'd made earlier down the road by 2 years. But they did leave some provisions in place that speak to how you can meet the requirement for off-site forest conservation. So a few years ago, all throughout the state, people would create banks, and they would buy a piece of property with a lot of forest and sell the rights to that forest off to people they would preserve that forest in compensation for clearing that was done elsewhere. And a few years ago, somebody actually read the state ordinance and said, wait a minute, you can't do that. If you're going to create a bank, you have to do it by planting new forest. You can't just save existing forest. So that, as you can imagine, through everything into an uproar. And so they came to a compromise where they said, okay, we'll let you do banks by preserving existing forest, but you can only use those for half your requirement. Interestingly, the city of Laurel, in its wisdom, did not fall into the trap that every other jurisdiction did in administering their forest conservation law. Your law regarding the creation of forest banks explicitly requires you have to create them by planting new forest. So where we get to then is a combination of planting new forest on site in the areas that we can. A lot of it is off to the west. We did revise the plan over the course of the last few months to subtract a few units and provide additional preservation in the center of the development along 198, or where the ramp comes back into 198. Some landscaping as well on the eastern boundary, which isn't rendered there. We will plant street trees. We did rough math and came up with an acre of street trees. The final forest conservation plan will come up with an exact number. Certainly, your ordinance doesn't limit the planting of street trees to within the property. And so if there are streets that you would like to have street trees, have your department reach out to us, and we'd be very happy to plant street trees there. That'll help you and help us meet the requirement as well. The second sub-criterion of 20-41.9A, sorry, I can't get all the way into the numbers, little number 2, there's something in between there, does specifically allow you to go and get a protective easement. So in other words, to save trees elsewhere by putting an easement over them. And that's what we're proposing to do at the church. We have presented a proposal to the church to acquire 7.65 acres of their property to be protected by an easement. We won't acquire their property. We'll simply have them grant a protective easement. That will actually only count 50% towards our requirement. So we go and get an easement for 7.65 acres, we can only credit that 3.83. And so when you take the forest preservation on site, the new planting, the reforestation, and some qualified landscaping, the street trees, and the protective easement, we're left with about 1.6 acres that we need to create a bank to go get, because there aren't any right now that the city has approved. If we can satisfy that with street trees elsewhere in the city, that'd be awesome. But the final takeaway is that one of the things that HB 1511 did require is, regardless of the fact that the rest of the changes to the forest conservation law are delayed by 2 years, the requirement that you can only meet 50% of your reforestation requirement by what they call qualified conservation, i.e. protecting existing trees with an easement, is now in force. We're proposing 3.83 acres out of our 8.68 requirement, which is less than 50%. So that's the summary. You have a forest conservation plan that takes into context what your plan recommends. It takes into context the conceptual site plan that's been approved. It does the best it can with the tools that you have placed at an applicant's disposal in your ordinance. And it meets those requirements and the new requirements of the state of Maryland. And I think that's all I have to say, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. It's a lot of numbers.
Thank you. A lot of numbers. I have 2 books of documentation that we have gone through. What I'd like to do before I open the public hearing is find out, are there any questions for applicant or staff at this time? We will ask again after the public hearing. Is there any questions now at this point? Mr. Wilson?
I just want to check with staff. I appreciate your
Thank you, sir.
testimony, sir. As far as working with the applicant for street trees, that'll be with Public Works or Parks Department? And identifying places around town where these folks can plant trees to meet their requirement. That's already in the plan. And was that in your technical report?
No, sir. I can answer that. Whether that was an offer
I don't
from me,
remember
right?
seeing it.
No, sir. You're absolutely
you-
correct.
you-
That was an offer from me, right here, right now. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll be able to do that. And really what my question is can the public have input to that of where we would put trees?
That will be with Public Works.
With Public Works?
Yes. Mhm.
And the question would be is how would the public who says, boy, I'd like to have a tree on my street, how would the public get involved? Do we have a program?
They can simply,
Sorry to put you on the spot again.
yes, all they would simply have to do is notify us. And as long as there's room to put one in, that's,
So let me ask the president of the council, I mean, rather than people, I think a program where we can actually solicit folks to, because, not everybody doesn't have a life and watches this meeting. So, you know what I'm saying?
I'm sure that we could put something together to advertise a program for street tree application.
Up into their limit of, what they have to do. So that's what I'm looking for.
Staff could work on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you.
Any other questions? Council President, any questions at this time?
Just a comment for the applicant, thanking you for looking into the House bill that went into effect. I know there was a lot of back and forth emails in the month of July to make sure that this hit the requirements that went into effect on July 1st.
Okay, at 7:09, I will call the public hearing. Excuse me, I'm going to repeat that. I did not have my microphone on. At 7:09 PM, I am calling the public hearing to order on the single item forest conservation application and resolution for 6902 Contee Road filed by Pulte Home LLC. Before I call for those that are signed up, I would like to add that the following 4 individuals have submitted written testimony. That testimony has been received, has been shared with the entire commission, and has been entered into the record. Melissa Holland, Madeline Spears, Ted Gambogi, and Maria Oswaldowska, Oswaldowska. Those 4 testimonies have been entered into the record and shared with all of us. And your name, ma'am?
Madam Chairwoman, I believe the dates on those were all from the May meeting.
Yeah, these were, we collected over time and
These are those that have been collected over time to be submitted as written testimony. We can show you what was submitted. Do you think someone submitted in your name? Oh, no, just for this application. We accepted testimony each month that this item remained tabled, and people were invited back or to repeat. So, but that could, thank you. So, again, many of you have signed up for both items 4 and 5. I would ask that you limit your testimony at this point to this diagram on the right with forest conservation and your comments regarding that. You will have an opportunity on the preliminary subdivision plan after the staff report and applicant have had time for that. Zachary Fritz, that's, I believe, with your applicant. Okay, no, thank you. Jonathan Height, welcome, Mr. Height. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Madam Chair, before we start, can I just ask, can you make sure that the countdown's working when you start?
I'm sorry.
After you give your name and address, I'm going to start the timer. Can you just please let me know if it's working?
Okay, will do. My name's Jonathan Haight. I live at 5 Riverview Court, apartment 204, 5 Riverview, Main Street, Laurel, 20707. And I listened carefully to what the applicants had to say, and what was not addressed, in my opinion, was that 28 acres of mature forest absorbs a huge amount of runoff. In our modern time, we are getting 100-year rain events annually. Ellicott City's had 2 100-year rain events in the last 4 years. Laurel's turn will come. The applicant has not addressed where this water will go after it has clear-cut 28 acres of mature forest. The wetland and wetland buffer in the northeast corner is not adequate to carry 28 acres of runoff. Where will the rest go? They addressed the 7 acres, whatever it was, going to the First Baptist Church. And then in the southwest corner, where's that going to go? Is that going to go to Contee Road? Contee Road, I understand, is to be widened. That will cost more trees. What will those be replaced with? Where will they be replaced? None of that is addressed. So this item of forest conservation is still up in the air, and it should be tabled again until all these questions are answered. And that is my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Haight. Michael B. Maxwell. Welcome, Mr. Maxwell.
I don't have any handouts this time.
Okay. I still have yours in my book.
Yeah, I'll need a volunteer to help me hold these up. Michael Maxwell, 14716 Exbury Lane, Laurel, Maryland, 20707. Okay, so this is the map that Soltes, I think that's how it's pronounced, it's a Hungarian name, right? Has provided. And I've color-coded it to, let's hold off on that one for just a sec. I've color-coded it to indicate where the forest currently is. And you can see the black areas are things that are not forest. They're the exit from I-95, various roads, and some houses that are in there, and blacktop. That one, which you can now hold up, is what this will look like after the development takes place. The buffer zones, as Pulte mentioned, around the outside. There's an area over here that used to be pavement, and I guess they're going to break that up and plant little saplings there or something. So those are the difference between the current and the what's proposed. There is an alternative in this case. The alternative is to not turn this into development. There are plenty of places in the Baltimore-Washington corridor that can be, excuse me, I got away from the microphone here. Plenty of places in the Baltimore-Washington corridor that can be used for development that are already non-forested or are concrete or something like that. This is one of the few remaining areas in Laurel. Bear Branch Creek is the other one that have any amount of contiguous forest, 26, I believe it was, acres. Turn it into a park, call it Pulte Park with apologies, and make it a thing that our next generations can enjoy, a gift from us and from Pulte. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Holland. Okay, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And if for those of you that may not have heard, Ms. Holland has said that her comments are directed to agenda item 5. And for those of you that have spoken that signed up for both, I will call on you again just to be sure. Monroe Myersburg. Welcome, take your time.
Thank you.
If you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Monroe Myersberg. I live at 400 Montgomery Street here in Laurel. An important reason for denying approval of this site is the long-term harm to the environment of Laurel. The site, primarily a well-established woodland area, would be approximately 90% clear-cut to make way for housing, sidewalks, and parking areas, all impervious to the absorption of water into the soil. Today's environmental standard is to have as little as possible stormwater runoff leave a site. Doing that would allow rainfall to seep through the soil to become groundwater, which would be available to replenish the water in our streams throughout the year. That's especially important in terms of times of drought. In terms of the ability to absorb rainfall on site, established forests are the champion at this task, and forests that are 100 years or more of age are world champions. Newly planted trees do not meet this need, nor will off-site plantings. If this project is permitted, each time it rains, 25 acres of what was forest would be replaced by 25 acres of storm runoff, potentially flowing down our hillsides, flooding yards and basements, and causing erosion here in Laurel and downstream all the way to the Chesapeake Bay. Another highly desirable ecological function of forests is their superiority at converting atmospheric carbon dioxide into atmospheric oxygen through photosynthesis, with the carbon then being used for plant growth, which permanently sequesters it into the soil.
You may continue for up to one more minute.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're doing fine. Is that okay?
And out of the atmosphere. This is of major importance today in combating human-generated climate change, a major crisis affecting the world. Both benefits would cease if the construction were to occur. Maintaining the woodland, on the other hand, would benefit both current and future inhabitants of Laurel. Therefore, I urge the city to cancel plans for this proposed development and recommend that if at all possible, the city solidify that action by converting the property into public parkland. It's also notable that at the moment, Laurel does not currently meet its quota of forested land, and this would further detract from meeting that. Thank you.
Thank you. Myron Clark, I don't have an agenda item. Did Myron Clark want to speak on this agenda item? Daniel Quintanilla, welcome. If you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Quintanilla, 14702 Northfield Court, Wellington. I would like to reiterate and reflect my community's strong opposition to this application in terms of the forest conservation. I will have notes on the other agenda item also, which I'll speak on. But for reasons that you've just heard, I mean, if the site plan, which is in the staff report, says that it's 28 acres being acquired, 23 acres in the site plan, 8.6 acres of planting requirements, 2.2 on-site planting, 1 street planting, and 5.47 acres off-site. I've lived in Laurel my entire life. I've lived in Wellington my entire life. I'm older than my house by months. I understand what it's like to have a privilege in our forest and dense forest population. As the previous speaker just told us, we don't meet the requisites in terms of forest to development. So in that aspect, I agree with the stormwater runoff. It's going to be a very difficult problem to have when you have multiple communities, including Wellington, including the overlook, including the community that I don't know the name of, in front of the Wellington, where will this water go? How will it affect the existing communities that are already here? I understand the hard work that goes into planning this subdivision and everything, and I respect that. But I would also urge the developers to ask themselves who they're currently affecting within the community, and if there is a middle ground where we can reevaluate the plan in terms of keeping more on-site trees, because that is a area that has, I mean, like I said, one of the last dense forest populations. I would strongly ask that we reconsider the site plan and understand the ramifications that we have for my generation and for the generations to come after it, and what we're trying to provide and the example we're trying to set in terms of forest conservation and also environmental health. Thank you.
Very much. Bruce, excuse me, thank you for that. And Bruce Land?
Yes.
Welcome.
Bruce Land, 9426 Northgate Road, Laurel. I'm going to say first, I'm not against the development per se, but I've been with the First Baptist Church of Laurel since the mid-'60s. So I've had a lot of association with this community, and I'm greatly concerned about the stormwater runoff. But after 57 years of being an engineer, numbers are kind of my thing. Clearing 25 acres doesn't sound like much, but that works out to be over 1 million square feet. Now, if we look at that, a measly 1 inch of rain on 25 acres represents 2.1 acre feet of water for runoff. Okay, 2 inches of rain is 4.2 acre feet of runoff. That's a lot of rain, acre feet of runoff. Now, from what I see, the only thing that they're going to do with the stormwater plan is slow the runoff. And if they're going to do this, it needs to be slowed a lot more. I'm very concerned about, we already have wetlands that we cannot build on the church property. I would like written assurance that this stormwater runoff is not going to adversely enlarge our wetlands and prevent us from future building. This church has been in the community for 140 years, and I expect them to be here long after I'm gone. And so I want to make sure that they don't get painted into a corner by this property and by the stormwater management for this. Now, they mentioned about doing this forestation set aside with the church. The church has seen a conceptual plan of what they're proposing. The church did vote for certain parties in the church to work further with Pulte to see an actual contract. We have not yet seen that actual contract. So, there's a lot, as you have already seen, there's a lot of differences between conceptual plans and final contracts. So I can't speak to whether that will be consented to by the church or not. They simply voted to move ahead. The concept looked interesting enough to move ahead and request for a concrete proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you. Jimmy Rogers, welcome.
My name is Jimmy Rogers, 303 Sandy Spring Road, right down the street. Members of the commission, others have and will call into question the calculations that project the benefit to the city of approximately $100,000 per year. Many of us in the community feel that even if that figure is accurate, is not worth the loss of 26 forested acres of relatively rare upland forest when the master plan calls for more. However, there is a further economic impact to consider. In a 2021 meta-analysis by Czech and Finnish researchers in the Journal of Ecosystem Services, the value of GDP of ecosystem services per acre of mature forest was estimated to be around $1,151 per year. This comprises the collective benefits of air quality, climate regulation, habitat maintenance, water management, and a few other factors. Multiplied by 26 acres of in question, that comes to about $30,000 per year in value to our community. That is, of course, an average, and to the extent that the forest is preventing more flooding and silt from entering our C- rated Patuxent River, per the EcoHealth report cards that were updated recently, that figure may actually be higher. So this eats into the projections of the project's value to the city in terms of growing out of a deficit, and points to the short-sightedness of cutting down mature trees, including a likely county champion tree, in the midst of an evolving climate crisis. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not currently have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the forest conservation application? Welcome, sir.
Hi, my name is Stosh, and I want to do is support what Jimmy.
Could you state your address for the record,
Oh,
please?
yes, 701 Laurel Avenue, Laurel, Maryland.
Thank you.
Of course. And I've seen what happens when you remove mature trees, because when they put in the new library, they took out all the trees in Emancipation Park, which caused a whole cascade of flooding for the next door neighbor there who never had flooding before. And when we talk about mature trees are communities. There are communities of birds, insects, and other creatures that live in that forest. And they absorb, and as Jimmy has said and other people have said, they take a lot of carbon out of the air. Planting new trees along the roads doesn't do squat for about 60 years. It takes a long time, and that's not a forest. Only a forest can provide a habitat. Only a forest prevents and can absorb enough water to keep the drainage. We saw what happened in Ellicott City. All that development caused a flood that damaged. I mean, how much was that worth? And the more we take down trees, I think, especially mature trees, seriously, we need to rethink that. We need to look at the total environmental cost of that. Right now, we're under what the state and the county have said we need to have in tree coverage, and I think we need to have a plan that increases our tree coverage. And this doesn't seem to do it, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Deepa James? Okay. Yes, you may. Welcome. And I have just received the additional sign up that went up.
My name is Keitha Muthy. I live at 7612 Kilbarron Drive, Laurel, Maryland, 0707. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do appreciate Pulte Homes and their designs, and I also appreciate what everyone has spoken about, the environment. My concern, and I apologize for my attire, I am a night shift nurse, and I had walked in late, but my concerns are more about the environment for our families and for our children and the traffic that comes through here. I have lived at Villages of Wellington for about 18 years now. When my husband and I and my children had moved in there, we were worried about the schools and the area. I think that Villages of Wellington had improved the community in the sense that more new programs came into the schools. And let me just say that when my daughter first started at Laurel High School, every day that I would go to pick her up, and this is my oldest daughter, and of course, this is many years ago, when Villages of Wellington first started, when I would go to pick her up, police were stationed in the school, and kids were handcuffed, on the sidewalk, and that is all improved. Our community has improved a lot as far as the crime and things like that. What my husband and I have seen, though, is that as more and more traffic comes through villages of Wellington, or as Contee is getting more congested, and more of the population comes into this area, we're having more solicitors, more intruders. I have pictures here from my Ring camera of a solicitor that was dropping off his card at midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry.
No, one more minute.
Okay. And then soon after that, another Ring, a neighbor down the street who says a person dressed in the same with a satchel is checking doors. Then recently we had a car that came speeding in through Kilbarron Drive. Because he hit the tree and the car flipped over, he didn't come into our porch. But as more and more population comes and as more and more of these intruders come, I feel like the crime is starting to come back up. And just how is this going to affect our communities as far as our children, our families, et cetera? I do appreciate the environment. I do appreciate that we would like to conserve the trees. In fact, I think Recreation and Parks, when I was applying for fencing in my backyard, then, you know, we have to have a certain amount of environment to conserve and et cetera. But this is a large, large development. So I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Scott Lilienthal? Okay. Brian Coyle? Welcome.
Brian Coyle, live at 336 Prince George Street. And I wanted to bring your attention to some questionable and impossible claims that are made in the fiscal impact study that was prepared by Sage Policy Group on behalf of Pulte Home Company. It's dated January 2024, and the potential fiscal and reputational risks that this poses to the city of Laurel. So in the introduction in page 3 of this fiscal analysis, Pulte proposes a housing development of 300 residential units. They say they will allocate several homes for sale as affordable and workforce housing, several homes of 302 residential units. That's what's written in here. So that's less than 1%, several 3 to 4, right? So that's a little bit less than 1%. And then the average sale price across all units is expected to be about $500,000, although they admit that this figure is subject to change based on market conditions. And they claim that there's a net fiscal impact of $109,000. So a net fiscal impact of $109,000, that's marginal, right? But then on their conclusion on page 6, they say, quote, the development would, without a doubt, have a positive fiscal benefit on the city of Laurel. So, you know, statements like that are a big red flag. So I think it's important to question the credibility of this analysis when the main statement in the conclusion makes a claim that's literally impossible. The analysis is based on assumptions about things like parking tickets and facility user fees and, you know, the household income of people who would occupy these units. And the truth is, there's no way to know without a doubt whether this will or will not have positive fiscal benefit for the future. I think the slim financial margin, however, is it does leave open the possibility that this project may actually have a very negative fiscal impact on the city. And we won't know the income of residents until the future. So the expense of just to the city of just one bad traffic accident that may result from the vast increase in traffic as a result of this development that one incident could cost over $100,000, right? So that's just one example. And furthermore, the analysis omits any natural capital accounting or the loss of ecosystem services of a nearly 30-acre forest, right? So they don't even think about that. That's not even included. But that's an important factor that a lot of people care about in this city and around the world. So I think it's incumbent upon the city, on behalf of the taxpayers, to conduct an independent fiscal analysis that does not rely on the Sage report and that ensures that the city does not suffer fiscal harm. And I suggest the analysis must include an accounting for natural capital that's based on federal precedent for natural capital accounting by the Department of the Interior. And, you know, again, one of the speakers tonight claimed that this was an unprecedented effort to provide affordable housing, yet in their own report, they say it's going to be less than 1% of the units are affordable. So, I mean, I don't know what to think about that. You know, you have to decide for yourself, but Finally, the city would be violating our commitment to residents that we made in our own master plan to protect a certain amount of land for park space for the benefit of psychological and physical well-being for our residents. So it's a glaring act of environmental injustice to do this in a city that's 80% community of color, and in Ward 2, which is almost 90% communities of color. You know, these kind of things erode trust between the community and leadership. And so I hope that you'll take that into account.
Thank you very much. Patel? I believe it's H-A-R. Harlot Patel on Wicklow Lane. Okay. That's all that I have signed up. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the forest conservation? Ms. Holland. Welcome.
Melissa Holland, 14716 Exbury Lane, that's in Wellington Villages. I understand the inherent conflict between growth and conservation, which you've so well stated. But I got to tell you, the heat is killing us. And that's yet another reason to keep the trees standing. We need trees to keep us cool. Dozens of studies show that trees reduce summer temperatures in urban spaces and reduce the incidence of heat-related illnesses and death. The effect of trees seems to be pretty dramatic. There are studies on a macro scale, for example, looking at an entire region, like Arizona State University School of Engineering found that the presence of trees in cities and towns across the contiguous United States keeps the near surface air temperatures up to 30 degrees Fahrenheit lower in summer weather than areas without trees. And there are studies on a local scale. The University of Washington looked at one city, considering summer heat thresholds that were considered dangerous for outdoor work and play. They found that in the summer, the probability of daytime temperatures going above these thresholds was up to 5 times greater in locations with no tree canopy than in locations with tree cover. And this effect endured at decreasing levels for every 30 feet of distance that they measured from the tree canopy. They also found more reported heat-related hospital visits and ER calls in the no-tree areas. Now to the topic for tonight. I do want to help the city of Laurel grow its tax base and its pool of affordable housing. And maybe Pulte can help do that. But there are places to build where there is no tree canopy and where you don't have to cut more trees down to widen the access roads. Cutting down the trees at the north end of Contee Road to make Corridor Center and widening the roads to allow increased traffic. Doing all that will leave many of us, the west end of Ward 2, vulnerable to the full force of the heat island that the highly paved Contee area has become. It will elevate our use of energy and water to stay cool. It may make some of us sick, and it will reduce the city's resilience to the planet's ever-rising temperatures, a resilience that I know the city of Laurel, as a sustainable city, wants to embrace.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Welcome. You would state your name. If you would come to the front, please. State your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Janae Sturgis, and I live 14108 Cork Corner. My concern is for the homes that are being built at Park Center. Most of the people, I just moved into the community, but I already have a concern. And I guess I'm security conscious because I'm in law enforcement. But my concern is the homes being built there. I didn't pay all this money to move into a home, to enjoy my home, to have foot traffic, to be trying to come down that hill or however, or being worried, security conscious looking out, or I've got to invest in all these cameras or anything happening in back of my home. I am a widow living there by myself. And it just shouldn't be worried about the rights of, or whatever, what's going on with Laurel. We as residents should have rights too. And I'm concerned about that. I'm to the point, I just moved there. I love my home. I'm ready to sell already. I'm hurt because had I known what I know now, I would have never moved there. I didn't pay all this money to have a home, to have this at my back door. Listen to the people. We live there, not just the animals and whatever's going on. It's like we have rights too. And I'm not just saying this for this to be on the record. I want it on the record. But listen to the people that live there. We live there. Y'all don't live there. We do. I do. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at 7:43 p.m. I would like the applicant, and the applicant is entitled to closing remarks. I would ask the applicant to please address, I had two things, stormwater management and the fiscal report. But first, I would like to ask staff, Mr. Burrow, in terms of both the fiscal report and the stormwater management, and I can assure you, and those of you that have been around the city for a long time and watched our deliberations and all for the Patuxent Greens projects and some of the others, we take very seriously stormwater management and runoff and things like that, because to your point, sir, from First Baptist Church, we don't want to create more problems. And so there are very strict rules around that. And I sometimes lose my place as far as when those are done. But when an applicant presents those, in terms of stormwater management, I believe even the city of Laurel, who fortunately has our own zoning authority, when it comes to stormwater management, I believe we have multiple and redundant reviews. Is that correct?
Stormwater, Madam Chair, is done by the county. So
The county, okay.
Yes. So that would have to be addressed and has to be approved by the county, then it comes to us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gibbs, or whoever you have to.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bettman, members of the commission, and Council President Cole once again. I'm happy to have Mr. Dunn, our civil engineer, come up but let me say this about the stormwater management, and then he can say if he needs to add anything. So, yes, stormwater management is the responsibility of Prince George's County through the Department of Permits, Inspections, and Enforcement. We have to have a concept stormwater management plan approved prior to the time we come in for a final site plan, okay? Now, in terms of the stormwater plan, the days of somebody, clearing a piece of property, putting concrete down, and having water stream off onto adjoining properties is long ago over. Our stormwater, it truly is. I've been doing this for a long time. Our stormwater management plan has to address the 100-year storm. And we cannot allow any water to go off the site any faster than it would in the pre-development stage. So our stormwater management plan has ponds that are shown on it. where water is, and we'll have bioretention, water will percolate back down to the subsurface. Some water that will be discharged will be held and can only be discharged at the same rate that it would discharge if nothing had ever happened on the property. That's how it's designed, and the review process with DPI is arduous and time-consuming. And believe me, they hold everyone's feet to the fire. Mr. Dunn, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Mr. Gibb. For the record, my name is Ken Dunn. I'm with Soltez. We're a local civil engineering firm. Been in Prince George's County since 1985. I myself have been in Prince George's County working with these regulations since 1987. Mr. Gibbs, actually, I want to offer you a job because you nailed stormwater management pretty well. The only thing I would add is that, we live in a box, and that box has metrics and standards, and those are good things because we all know that there's a relationship between forest and stormwater management. And at the state level, through the Maryland Department of the Environment, and as adopted by every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland that I'm aware of, those regulations have increased over the years such that woods, a site has to essentially go back to what's considered woods in good condition. Our stormwater management plan addresses 2 points: stormwater management quality and stormwater management quantity. Those are the microbial retentions that Mr. Gibbs referenced a little earlier. Those deal with water quality, and that is recharging the groundwater so that we don't experience the negative effects of the loss of groundwater. 100-year control is water quantity control, and that is actually, a bigger issue. We cannot change the amount of water that leaves the site. In fact, we can't even change the direction it goes. DPIE will, or the Department of Permits Inspection Enforcement, the jurisdictional agency, will review all of those 3 times. They'll review it at time of concept, they'll review it at time of final, and they will review it at time of permit. So we have multiple choices or multiple chances to review this document by the professionals at the appropriate agencies, and then we turn them into the city of Laurel under the site plan process. So you will have a chance to look at it as well. Our stormwater management plan meets all these regulations. We've carefully gone over this multiple times, and we've as the plan has evolved, we have made sure that the stormwater management meets the regulations under every evolution of the plan itself.
Thank you. And you said something about not only can it not increase, it can't change direction. Is there a way that our gentleman that spoke from First Baptist, where he was asking for, kind of a guarantee that it wasn't going to increase, how can he get access to your reports to get a comfort level understanding of where that is? Is it something you all can just swap numbers and he can get additional reports or something like that?
Mr. DeMarco just authorized me to say to you that we'll be happy to provide that report to him and to anyone else and to you.
If you would like that report. And
We've actually, part of our land has been, that's not just the stormwater management, but it's wetland.
Correct.
We couldn't even build our road into the property at a certain time of year because something was going to be migrating and laying eggs or something in there.
But they can share with you to your point about the storm, the acreages and the amounts of runoffs and all of that. Let them get that with you.
Acre feet of water they can hold.
Thank you. And to the gentleman that raised the 100-year flood plan, I understand what you're saying about Ellicott City and the different things that have happened there. And one thing, and Mr. Gibbs stated it, and I had planned to state it, even just in my 14 years on this commission, the rules and regulations around putting cement down and things like that, those days are way in the past. And again, I agree we've got a lot of water and things like that, but we do have regulations, and the city very much holds applicants' feet to the fire to make sure those are met. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam. Will the information that was just discussed
be available to City of Laurel on the City of Laurel website. That would be a good idea.
We're happy to make it available.
Mr. Burrow, is that okay? It can be put up in reference to this, the stormwater management and those kinds of things can be put up under economic development under this project, because this project will continue irrespective of decisions this evening, will continue.
We can put as much information that'll help the public as fabric. Yes.
Thank you. And if people didn't hear, or if anyone watching on TV, Mr. Burrows says that as much information that can be provided to give the public more information, they will do that. Thank you.
Is that an affirmative that the report will be made
Yes,
public?
yes, yes. Thank you. And he was talking about the stormwater management report that is being done. And as it was stated, it will be reviewed 3 different times. Okay, Mr. Gibbs.
Yes, I also have, as I stated at the beginning of the hearing, I have Mr. Fritz here, who authored the fiscal impact study. To me, that was more of a preliminary subdivision plan issue as opposed to a forest conservation plan issue, but I'm happy.
Agree. No, I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. The only other 2 things that I'd like to address that were comments made. First of all, with regard to our efforts to secure the off-site easement with the First Baptist Church, I'm just going to relate what has been related to my client by contacts within the church, and that is that our request was presented at the church apparently has in these meetings where the entire congregation can attend. A presentation was made, our request was made, and what was described to my client as I don't want to say just a majority, because it was classified as substantially greater than a majority, viewed it in a favorable fashion and asked for my client to submit a concrete proposal. My client has submitted that concrete proposal. There simply has not been another meeting of the church congregation to conduct business. It's later this month. So that's where we are on that. And then Mr. Coyne testified about some of the things that were said. It is unprecedented that workforce and affordable housing has ever been offered for sale in the city of Laurel. It has never happened. The first time that it does happen, it's unprecedented. That's a fair and an honest statement to make, and I made it. Mr. Coyne's percentage was really off. It's 7%. 7% of the 293 units are being offered for either workforce or affordable, and the pricing is in our application, just as it was in our application for the conceptual site plan. And I'll go over that. If we get to the subdivision plan, I'll go over that in greater depth then. But the only other thing, I did have some, I think it's significant, just again, I applaud and understand calls for conservation. I'm with that. But I also understand a property owner seeking to do something with their property rights. And that's kind of the conflict that we find ourselves in a little bit here. I take no quarrel with desire to save forests whenever you can. And so I don't take umbrage with any of those comments, but I have to relate that it's the city that designated this property for high density development. It's the city that approved the conceptual site plan and approved the number and type of units that we're here with. We relied upon that and came in here with this preliminary subdivision plan. And I do think it's interesting because I referred in my earlier statements about the quadrant that we're dealing with here, being bounded by, Van Dusen and Cherry. And I submitted some aerial photographs from about 3 or 4 photographs starting in 1965. And those photographs show that this entire quadrant was forested in 1965. And then the photographs bring you forward all the way to 2023. And first you see Arbery, They take down the trees and build their townhouses. Then South Arbor. Then you come down to the corner of Van Dusen and Cherry Lane coming across. Yeah, the photographs that I submitted, I think that's one of them. They have dates at the top, but as you go through them, you can see as each development progressed, the trees came down and homes were built. Some of these people live in them probably.
I do.
And it's just part of the development effort to provide housing that's in demand. And again, you know, if this property was zoned for 5-acre single-family detached lots, we wouldn't have any business being in here asking for what we're asking for. We're just coming in reliance on what's been approved and in reliance on the zone that has been assigned to this property by the city of Laurel. So we're the last quadrant left, and it's unfortunate for my client because now this piece of property becomes kind of a target. But we're not asking to do anything that everybody else hasn't done legally. And what we're asking to do is entirely on point with what the zoning, what the comprehensive plan both recommend for this property, and what the approved conceptual site plan recommended. And so with that, I would very respectfully request approval of the Forest Conservation Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Are there any questions of staff or Council President Cole for either the applicant or staff? Any commissioners have questions? We close the public hearing. The fiscal report's already up. Fiscal report's already up on the all of the documents that we have here in front of us as commissioners are all on the city's website. The fiscal report that you had, sir, was an earlier one. The fiscal report that's on the site right now is dated August 6th. Okay? Thank you. Any questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion or comment.
I would like to move to approve the forest conservation application and the resolution number 2404 PC 6902 for Contee Road as filed by Pulte Home Company. And before I give up the floor, I'd like to say a couple things. One is that I was the chairman of the master plan that we did in 2016. And I just want to go on record saying that we purposely did MXT. You weren't here in 16, but your predecessor was, and I think Ms. Pulte was, and we purposely put that in there because of the way that attacked to the 95. So the other thing is I was part of this commission when we voted for the concept plan. So that's the reason I am very comfortable approving the, there's people need places to live. I appreciate conservation, and I think we have to think bigger when we think about conservation than just the city. By having density here in the corridor, in the 95 corridor, we preserve other places around the state. Now, I know that doesn't satisfy you when it's your house near it, but I think we've got to think about this regionally. And so with that, I'll ask for approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Kish?
No.
Mr. Welford?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I would like to call a not to exceed 10 minutes, hopefully 5-minute break, if that's okay, and if there are restrooms available. We will be back. Laurel TV, thank you. Sorry this was not planned. Let's say 5 minutes, but no more than 10. Thank you. I don't know. We are still on or not? If somebody could poke their head through the door and let me know whether I should start again, or I'd appreciate that. Christian, do you just want me to start, or just wait a minute? Thank you. Oh, we're good to go? Thank you so much. All right, let's see if I can get back to business. And thank you all. We are restarting the meeting at 8:10 p.m. Moving on to agenda item 5, the preliminary subdivision plan application number 956 and resolution number 24-03-PC 6902 Contee Road, filed by Pulte Home Company, LLC. Included in this application is the public hearing on this matter and the final action by Planning Commission. Mr. Burrow.
Good evening again, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. This is Monte Burrow, Director of Economic Community Development, presenting the staff report. Application number 956 was filed on January 25th, 2024 by Pulte Home LLC, 9302 Lee Highway, Fairfax, Virginia, 22031. Submitted a preliminary subdivision plan, MXT plan application proposing to a total of 293 residential units to be constructed on the property known as Corridor Center, located at 6820, 6900, 6902, and 6920 Contee Road, Laurel, Maryland, 20707. The applicant, Pulte Home Company LLC, proposes a total of 293 resident units within the Corridor Center. The applicant proposes to construct 132 stacked townhome condominium units, two-family, 13 active adult villa homes, 30 feet by 70 feet, and 100 single-family attached townhome, inclusive of 12 live-work units. The units will be 24 feet, 22 feet, and 16 feet in width by 40 feet and 50 feet depth. The project will allocate a number of homes for sale as affordable and workforce. A significant component of the proposed corridor development will be the 12 live-work single-family attached unit, which will be located directly along the primary access road into the community from Contee Road. The live-work units will be 3-story plus a habitable attic with rear garage access and outdoor living on both the second and habitable attic. The live-work units will allow residents to operate their business on the ground floor of their residential unit, and the project will allocate several homes for sale as affordable and workforce housing. The Pulte Home LLC aims to serve a variety of housing needs in the city, all for sale, no rental. First-time buyers, move-up townhome buyers, active adult villas with first-floor masters, which be 13, workforce housing, 10 townhomes, 16 feet for sale towns, 5 at $246,000 and 5 at $333,000. Moderate income 10 stacked condominium units for sale, 5 at $145,000 and 5 at $175,000. A site plan, justification statement, drawings, and cover letter asking for comments were sent to state and local agency, and a memorandum was sent to the City of Laurel Department. Comments from the local, state, and City of Laurel Department are in the staff report. A letter explaining the nature of the application, advising of the scheduled hearing before the City of Laurel Planning Commission was sent by certified mail to all contingency owners. Staff recommends the City of Laurel Planning Commission recommend approval to the application number 960 with the following conditions. The applicant shall obtain a final detailed MXT subdivision preliminary site plan approval from the Planning Commission. The applicant shall obtain final record plat approval from the Planning Commission. The applicant shall obtain forest conservation plan approval from the Planning Commission. In connection with the proposed subdivision, the last portion of Contee Road will be upgraded with additional right-of-way dedication, infrastructure improvement that will include curb and gutter, sidewalk, street trees, and streetlights will be installed on the development side of Contee Road along the frontage of this subdivision. And there will be additional pavement on Contee Road to ensure a minimum total paved width of 24 feet, all of which is subject to approval of governmental authority with jurisdiction over Contee Road. The applicant shall comply with all applicable local, state, federal laws and regulations in the development of the property. That concludes my reading, Madam Chair, and thank you.
Thank you, Director Burrow. I would like to invite the applicant.
Thank you and good evening once again, Chair Bettman, members of the commission, and Council President Cole. Pleasure to be here this evening representing Pulte Homes on this preliminary subdivision plan application. A lot was said at the prior hearing. I'd like to incorporate that into this presentation. I also would like to say formally that my client adopts the staff report as well as, and we accept the recommended conditions by staff contained in that staff report. In an effort to be a little shorter here, I'd like to incorporate all of the information in our application, in our statement of justification, in the plans prepared by Soltez, in the exhibits, and in our expert witness submittal studies, and in particular the fiscal impact study. And I am going to ask Mr. Fritz to speak like for just a few seconds because Mr. Coyne had some, very sincere concerns that he raised, and I did want Mr. Fritz, we've had an opportunity to talk with Mr. Coyne, but I did want Mr. Fritz to set the record straight in his mind before the commission as well. The only thing I'd say is that it's our understanding and belief that our application submittal conforms with all of the ordinance criteria for the approval of a preliminary subdivision plan, and I'll submit on the record. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'd simply say that my client is extremely excited about the possibility of bringing this exciting community into the city of Laurel and providing workforce and affordable housing for sale at the numbers that you've heard. They do have escalators, but at the numbers you've heard represented by Mr. Burrow. And thank you very much. And yes.
I was going to say, the commission received a presentation, I think it was 14 slides just before, but if we could click through again, in the interest of moving forward, but just so that the public is aware of what we receive within the site plan. So if we could just go through, we've shown this, that's laying the properties up in the left. You can go up, and we've talked about that. And that is what we just discussed. Okay, and Mr. Gibbs has gone over this. I was more looking, there you go. Just again, as far as a preliminary site plan, at this point, the commissioners are able to see some of the things for this. There is, after this evening, there are many, not many, there are some additional steps. But this, again, will be on the website for people to see. And I guess I could ask, again, I've been to the property, the new watershed property. There are some similarities there. Is that correct?
On the same product lines. The work, we have 24.
That's what I thought.
Not half the stack.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd just say for the record, that was Mr. DeMarco speaking.
Thank you.
And the only other thing I'd like to add before I ask Mr. Fritz to come up, when we submitted our concept site plan, we submitted a bubble diagram, and then we submitted the plan that you saw, the side by side. And we identified in our CSP everything that I said, and the staff report identified those same things, and that was the basis on which everything was decided for the conceptual site plan. So I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to let you know there was a bubble diagram too, but that was our illustrative conceptual site plan that was in the package and which was approved as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Fritz, ever so briefly.
Thank you. Brief, though I know people love fiscal impact studies. I'm Zach Fritz of Sage Policy Group. Thank you so much for having me here. So 3 points I want to go over that were brought up about our study. The first is about the unit mix. And I just want to say that the number of units matter, but the input to our model is the assumed average sale price. So the point that was brought up about that doesn't affect how the model works. That was the first point. The second one was the language in the conclusion where we say without a doubt. We're not saying that our results are infallible. What we're actually saying there, and I'll just read the sentence, is critically, this analysis endeavors to be as conservative as possible in its methodology and assumptions in order to demonstrate that the development would, without a doubt, have a positive fiscal impact on the city. And that's a methodological choice we made to use an average cost method to determine the costs the city would incur as a result of this development. So what we did is we took the total fiscal year 2022 operating expenditures of the city. We divided that by the number of households according to the Census Bureau to determine a per household cost of services for Laurel.
and then we applied that to each of the new units. This, by definition, overstates the costs because it includes fixed costs. For instance, the mayor's salary does not increase proportionally to the number of households. This is true of most categories. Yeah. So that's what we mean when we say without a doubt, is that our methodology is intentionally conservative in order to understate the benefit and overstate the costs. And that's where the without a doubt language comes in. As a final point, they brought up parking tickets, and actually I think that was misunderstood because we, in calculating the services fees and other taxes, intentionally excluded categories that we thought would be overstated if we included them, including parking tickets and red light camera tickets. Though, again, all service provisions were overstated due to the average cost method. I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but I think that covers everything that was brought up.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Mr. Wilson?
Just for the record, what's the bottom line, just for the people that haven't read it that are?
Oh, sure. So the bottom line is that there would be, hold on, I want to give you the exact number. Our model shows that the annual net fiscal benefit would be $104,327. Yes, that's net. Yes. Yes. Anything else? Yes, thank you.
I will open the public hearing on the preliminary subdivision plan application and resolution for Pulte Home Company, LLC, at 8:22. There has been quite a shift in our physical attendance here in the room, so instead of calling all of the names that originally signed up for both agenda items, could I have a show of hands of anyone that would like to speak on this application? Welcome. If you would please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Sean Conover. I live at 7000 Contee Road. I'm actually not a resident of the city of Laurel, just outside. I guess one concern, well, I want to first state that I object the proposed development. I think it's kind of sad that we unfortunately have to develop every single square foot of land, to amass more tax base for the city, as Mr. Grant pointed out. But one concern, being a resident on Contee Road, is, and I heard in the opening that there was going to be some improvement to Contee Road, but it sounded like it was only going to start after Cherry Lane, the intersection of Contee and Cherry Lane.
So it's Van Dusen and Cherry Lane. The Contee is the new. Let me ask Council President Cole real quick too, and you can turn the timer off for this. I'm sorry.
The timer is currently not working visibly for everybody, so.
If you would explain what the discussion was, that was Van Dusen Road from 198.
The city's traffic study was only for Van Dusen Road. There are improvements coming to Contee Road that'll be done by the county.
Okay.
Those are, Director Miller might be able to speak better to those.
Yes, there are some improvements coming to Contee at the intersection of Contee and Van Dusen. They're installing new sidewalks along there, and we were provided with a tentative plan from the county, since they control that intersection and they actually control Contee Road.
Right, so I'm speaking against Contee and Cherry Lane, which is where the corridor is going to border.
Mm-hmm.
And so as of right now, there are no sidewalks. The shoulder is about 4 inches wide. You also have Pirate Lane, which is, I understand, a private road, but you can barely fit one car down there.
But that's what he was talking about. That entire strip of Contee Road is what the county is working on the plans.
Correct.
And the developer has some of that information.
Okay.
That will be worked on.
Right.
And
So
to your point, and to include sidewalks.
Right. So I just wanted to confirm that Pulte is working with the county to improve Contee Road. Okay.
That is correct. And if you go on the Yes, not the traffic. If you look at several of the reports that are listed online, it's discussed, and some of the wording changed between originally and now as far as the types of improvements to Contee Road.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Hearing and seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing at 8:26 p.m. Excuse me, I turned the microphone off. Are there any questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair, I have a question
President
for
Cole?
the applicant. Can you speak more on the traffic study at Cherry Lane and Van Duzen? As we just heard at City Council last week, that's the worst intersection on Van Duzen Road from the city's traffic study. How will your traffic impact that intersection?
Yes, I'd like to actually ask our traffic expert, Mr. Wes Guckert, to come up and respond to that question. He has really all of the very minute details that you see.
If you will please state your name and address for the record.
For the record, my name is Wes Guckert with the traffic group. Business address is 9900 Franklin Square Drive in Nottingham, Maryland. The issue of Van Duzen and Cherry has been studied extensively in our traffic report, and it was reviewed multiple times by the city and their traffic consultant. It's important to understand that while your city traffic study shows it's operating as the worst, it doesn't mean that it's failing, because we're showing that with and without the proposed development of Carter Center, that it would still be operating a level of service C, as in Charlie. It will not be failing with or without us. Now, that doesn't mean that improvements cannot be made to create a better level of service, reduce delay, improve and reduce congestion and queuing. And of course, in today's world, the biggest thing we want to do is ensure safety. And I'm, without even knowing what the city's plans are for Van Duzen Road, I'm sure the safety issue is going to be paramount. And by that, I mean to ensure that we reduce speeds as much as possible and that we provide safety features, ADA safety features for all types of mobility that are going through the intersection. Okay?
So for the commission, I did look into these traffic studies, the city's traffic study, the previous applicant's traffic study, and Corridor Center's traffic study were all completed within a 4-week period and all had very similar results, all within plus or minus 20 cars at all the intersections. My question is, Corridor Center, from your traffic study, looks like half of the traffic will go out Cherry Lane, the other half will go out Contee. The city is working on our plans to improve the intersection, but that's going to add a lot of cars going half one direction, half the other. Do we know from your study what that will do to the rating? So it's currently at a C. I can't imagine adding half of the Corridor Center to that rating is going to make it better or keep it the same.
It's not going to make it a failing intersection.
It won't make it failing, but you are saying that it will make it slightly worse.
Well, of course, you're adding some additional cars. There's no question to that.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff or for?
I just want to, if I could, Mr. Miller, on the traffic studies, I just want to get it on the record. We have had our traffic engineer look at the applicant's traffic study and concurs with the findings.
Yes, sir.
And we have not added in, they have not adjusted for any county improvements to Contee, nor our proposed improvements to Van Duzen.
Correct.
So with some hope, those things could get better.
Could get better,
And
correct.
hopefully not worse. And then the only other thing is does anybody, and I don't know putting anyways, is the county plan for improvement funded? Or is it like ours, waiting funding?
I know that the intersection was promised to me by the Department of Public Works. They hope to have those improvements finished, as I will quote, by the end of fiscal year 25.
Okay, so it has to be funded then, or they wouldn't be
Yes.
able to do it. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, but again, we know that, funding is fluctuates.
I'm not going to castigate my county brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion, the preliminary subdivision plan number 956 and resolution number 24-03 PC 6902 Contee Road filed by Pulte Homes Company LLC.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I'll second that.
Mr. Kish, second. If you would please call the roll.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kish,
Yes.
Mr. Welford,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thought I could do this better. A point of personal privilege before I adjourn this meeting. Tonight's meeting was my last meeting. For personal reasons, I am resigning my position as a commissioner on this commission. I have had 14 outstanding, personally for me, wonderful years serving on this committee. I thank all of the staff members, current and past, both in the Economic Development Department and all across this city. I'd like to thank current commissioners, past commissioners, current council reps, all of the council reps for the support to me personally. I have learned a great, great deal. My father, who is passed, when I was invited to join this commission, he called me and he said, I know that you've been asked. He said, this is not a commission that you show up to and listen and say yes or no. It's a commission that takes work. You drive to somewhere, you talk to people, you listen. And he said, it's okay to say no if you can't put in that kind of time. I'm so glad he gave me that advice all those years ago, and I'm glad that I accepted the position. So I thank you to the commissioners, thank you to the citizens of Laurel and the applicants that have come in front of us and in front of me. And as commissioners, I remind people that, or as citizens, I remind you that we commissioners are just citizens just like you that have accepted an invitation from the mayor and city council to participate. And it is very fulfilling. I encourage people. Our alternate down here came to a meeting one time, just curious as he came into the city. And we invited him to get involved. And I thank you for that. I would also like to thank the Laurel TV, who carries us continuously and through COVID, did a wonderful job. Sorry for rambling on. We live in the greatest city in Maryland, or town, or municipality, whatever we want to call Laurel, and I will forever be here. I'm like Dad on that, Mom, if you're watching. And I wish everyone the best. And this meeting is adjourned.